Welcome to Music Matters Podcast with Daryl Craig Harris, talking about all things music with celebrities, artists, music business insiders, and more.
Robert Deeble, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm all right. Thank you for having me.
So you're joining us up in Seattle, right?
Yes, Seattle proper.
Awesome. Yeah, we were just talking before we started that you're actually a Southern California guy like myself.
Yeah, and I understand you were in Huntington Beach in the 80s. Is that right?
Yeah, I still miss it. I live in Las Vegas now, and I miss the beach big time.
Oh my gosh. I wonder if we ran into each other once or twice. So I grew up in Long Beach, California, and for a while was really involved in that kind of underground music community there. And
yeah, there's definitely a scene, and even going back to the punk days, punk rock, and the early '80s. I'm sure we know a lot of the same folks. Probably so.
who were some of the folks you remember musically?
I was playing actually in bands up in LA doing like the Roxy and the Whiskey and that stuff. And I was in a band that was kind of a Toto Mr. kind of thing. But that's the same era like when Guns N' Roses was getting signed, Poison, all those guys. But then there was the Orange County punk scene, and so there's just like that, all that whole very vibrant. It's changed, quite a bit these days.
Yeah,
of course,
for sure.
This is going back to I'm 60, so this is going back to like the mid early 80s.
You're 1 year ahead of me.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
I turned 59 in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so we're same era, I guess. So we're talking today because you have a new album out, The Space Between Us. It's your 7th album. And it's actually, I was just checking that out. It's really cool. I love what you do on this. It's very story driven. The arrangements are great. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot of other things. So how did you develop your style? Who were some of your early influences? Because what I hear is kind of a Tom Waits, Bob Dylan-ish thing in there, but I don't know. You tell me.
Awesome. Well, one of my big musical mentors was Stephen Hodges, who was Tom Waits' drummer. So you're not far off the map there. And I was always really inspired by Dylan's lyrical writing, and have covered him on a couple of occasions, put a couple of singles out of Dylan tunes. But, I just have always had, I feel like kind of this intuitive thing that I do, and I haven't really had a way of describing it, and I don't really think of it around comparatively around anybody else. It's sort of been a mystery to me, the stuff that comes out. But what I found kind of really fun was when I first started putting out records, I would get reviewed, and the reviewers would say, "Sounds like." And that would be the first time I had heard of those artists. So in a way, I was like behind the 8 ball of being cool. But, people would say, "This sounds a little bit like Nick Drake." And I'm like, "Nick Drake?
Who's that?"
And then I would literally fall in love with Nick Drake. I mean, he became like an antidepressant for me. It just like totally calmed me down. And another friend turned me on to Leonard Cohen. Like you remind me a little bit of Leonard Cohen. And then I really dug deep into Leonard, particularly his lyrical play around words lyrically, the way he creates visuals with his words. I just love that. And I've covered one of his tunes as well. So then that would influence, I think, my music a little bit going further. But so those are some of the little guiding lights that kind of happened as I started my music career. I think the Beatles were always probably Revolver era Beatles were always an influence, and that's probably where you get this wacky desire of mine to always have string sections. I think it's, there's some sort of George Martin spirit that's just floating in my brain. I don't know.
Yeah, George is alive and well in many artists,
Yeah.
which is not a bad thing. And it's actually funny that you mentioned a certain era of the Beatles because, of course, there are eras of the Beatles. Things definitely change with them, and I think and yourself too. Like it's really interesting to hear some of your earlier stuff. It's and the labeling thing is interesting too because it's as humans we like to do that. We like to think, oh well, you're like this, you're like that. But I think you've actually found a very unique lane. And especially with the arrangements, but also the story driven lyrics. How important for you are the lyrics? Which comes first for you, the music or the lyrics, or
Oh,
both, maybe?
yeah, it depends. I've written songs in both ways. Sometimes a lyrical concept strikes me first, and it's usually just a phrase, and I want to build something out around that phrase. Um, and then I try to compose around whatever the lyrical concept is inspiring, and that would, that's kind of the Leonard Cohen orientation probably for me. But in other cases, there's a particular feel or chordal thing that's happening, and then that evokes a particular emotion, and then I just give it a lot of space until words finally form, and then maybe there's a concept around those words that I began to follow and write about.
You find that I know you work with some great musicians. I'll name a few on I think that are on this album. It's that Victor Krauss, which is Alison related to Alison Krauss, of course, which is a great lineage to come from. A drummer Lacey Brown, and some other collaborators you have on this album and others. Talk about that collaboration, not only for songwriting but just putting together records.
Oh yeah. I never want to be too tightly clenched around what I do. And I think maybe that comes from I wish part of me feels jealous of people that had played in bands all their life because they have that camaraderie and that community around them. And for whatever reason, that never was something that happened for me. I think it might just be part of living on the West Coast is everybody's so strapped financially that you don't have, maybe if I was in the Midwest, then me and my bandmates would just hang out every Saturday and jam.
Right. Yeah. It's a different lifestyle.
It's a different lifestyle. And, I think from the very beginning, it was like, we got to get together to put together a set specifically for a gig. And then after that gig is done, we all kind of go our separate ways, and everybody's playing in other bands and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I just really became, I don't know, I'm very appreciative or really tuned in relationally in the moments that I'm working together with someone else, because I really love that aspect and wish it was something that was always there. And so I really like to build relationships with people when we make records. Yeah, it really becomes part of the ethos of the record for me. Each record that I think about, I also think about the people that were with me on that record. And some people have become very, very close.
Yeah, part of it's, I think, with the recording too, it's building that trust, right? Where you bring those, because you're, I mean, essentially these songs are your babies, they're your children.
Yes.
And you're entrusting that into not only musicians, but also producer, which we're going to talk about, your relationship with Rick Hordensky. But do you feel like that, are you very open to different ideas, or how does that work? How does that work for you?
I was beginning to kind of head down that road and I got sidetracked, but, once a song is formed, which is very much kind of, that process is very kind of, individualistic for me. I'm usually like, it's contained in my own head.
Right.
Once that song is formed, I want to let go, not clench my fists, but let go of where that song goes when other people come in and bring their signature to it, and not have an overly defined
preconceived notion.
Yes, right. And that's a real joy for me. I think that's the George Martin thing, right? It's like you can hear the foundations of the song, but that could go in 100 different directions depending on how you arrange it. And so it's really exciting for me when people bring their own personality into the song, and that will often change the song. Um, and I kind of have a little bit of a producer brain as well. And so I will often take something that somebody does and really run with that. And so there was even some moments in which, on the last song on the record, Rich used an effect on the strings in the very end. It kind of created a little bit of a delay. And it just happened once. And I'm like, that needs to carry on through the rest of the outro. Stuff like that. When we bump into stuff like that as an accident, I love that because that kind of feels like jazz or something.
Yeah, sometimes the universe is helping you, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to take the gifts when you get them. Talk about your producer, because I know you've built a multi-year relationship with him. Is it Rick or Rich?
It's Rich.
Okay.
It's spelled Rick, but German, so Rich.
Okay, I got you. Okay, yeah, talk about that because I know you've had a great relationship with him and working on this album in particular, this project. Talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, the producer's probably the most important relationship you build on a record, and that's where you really have the most trust. It's the most vulnerable place that you are with someone. And so each person I've worked with on all those records, been a lot of trust, and always that has resulted in a really good relationship that stands the test of time. With Rich, that was a relationship that kind of started on the road. He is an absolutely mystical guitar player. And he was in a band called Over the Rhine that his work with that band just was unimaginable. You couldn't begin to imagine what he did with that. It was really magical. And that band would often play in similar veins as I was touring in. And I opened for that band a couple of times in the 90s. And so Rich and I knew each other from that, but also I did a lot of touring with another band that was kind of in that vein, called the Vigilantes of Love. And so we would cross paths a lot on the road.
Play the same venues.
Absolutely. So it was probably about, I want to say 10 years ago, that I got a call from Rich. We didn't know each other very well, but we just knew of each other. And he reached out to me and said that he would really like to do a record with me. And I was very complimented by that. But I couldn't really make sense of it, to be honest with you. Like we were talking on the phone, and he was in Cincinnati, I was in Seattle, and I had my team over here that I was working with, and I just couldn't get it into my head of flying out there all the time, and so I really appreciated the call, and we kind of agreed to, just have this idea and see where it goes at some point. So fast forward, I was recording A Heart Like Feathers in Portland. And we had this particular tune that we wanted something really different guitar-wise throughout this song. And I thought of Rich, and I'm like, hey, why not, would you contribute a guitar track to this? And he's like, absolutely. And we had it in 24 hours. It was fantastic. And then fast forward again, probably in 2017, I was recording in Seattle my album Beloved, and I had cobbled together all the string parts with the string players, but the title track was something that I just wanted something really intentional with the string section and not necessarily me like spitballing.
Right.
And that's one of the things Rich does. And so I reached out to Rich and said, would you consider creating a score for this song? He said, absolutely. And he created the score, and that was kind of an aha moment.
Mm.
And that's when I saw Rich much more than a guitar player.
Right, yeah, and arranger and the string arrangements, I should say, are really well. You mentioned Beatles, and it is very reminiscent of Beatles, and it's intimate. It's not like an orchestra. It's a
yeah.
So that seems to be very important with you, like with the working with him doing the string arrangements. And do you have a set of usual players that you use for that, or is it different folks?
Yeah. So the way that would work is for probably 5 years, I would come up with something that I wanted strings for, and I would demo it in my own studio, and I would send it to Rich, and he would create a score. And I would get the score, and I would play it with my string section here in Seattle, which, goes by the name One Small Orchestra. And we would play to that, that score, and then we would go out and we would do 1 or 2 gigs with that song and make a lot of notes. And
see what works and what doesn't work.
And so then I would kind of nuance that a little bit around, like sometimes the strings were really awesome, but they got in the way a little bit with what was happening vocally, or I wanted more space or something like that. Right. So we would send it back to Rich, and he would make edits to the score. And we would eventually settle with something that felt like, solid. And that we were all a part of.
And it's really an art form. People hear strength, they don't realize what goes into getting that right.
Yeah.
And that was something like you mentioned with George Martin. Like he was a really, really great ear for that. It's putting that all together.
It really did.
And it can really bring a song alive in a unique way.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the crowdfunding aspect, because I know that's something that you used on this record. It's part of your release strategy, which we can get into as well. But talk a little bit about crowdfunding and having support from the community that loves your music.
Yeah. Well, it's I've had a very different release strategy. I'm very pragmatic about it. Making really good quality records requires some sustainability financially. And that's just comes some of the pragmatics around it. We could all create something in our laptops and throw it out online and do that all the time. But I really like to, have a full process around it and really spend a lot of time and that kind of stuff. So it does get expensive. I have a very small fan base of people over those, 20 years, 30 years. And, I just don't want to throw music out to Spotify for free and everybody's like, hey, that was great, high five. Ever since the MP3 came out, the sustainability of smaller artists just vanished.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of younger people understand that. I don't mean to sound like, back in my day.
But that's a reality that every artist is dealing with, especially indie artists, right?
It's an absolute reality. And what a lot of people don't understand is that even when you were signed to labels, you had a kind of a guaranteed royalty that was protected federally.
Yeah. And
that was the mechanical royalty. And no matter how bad your record deal was, you could always count on, point something cents per album, came out to about 0.70 cents, something like that, per album sold. And so, we never knew if anybody was doing the books right or not, but on the artist royalties, but on the mechanical royalties, you could just look that up.
Right. Yeah, that was actually tracked heavily.
Right. And then you had product, and product was the other way that people, artists made a living. And so when I started going out on the road in the 90s, I often would sell a full box of CDs at a show. and that would be $300.
Yeah,
And
it supports the gas, the hotel, all the basics that we need to survive.
right. And I prided myself on paying salary to the 3 or 4 guys that would go with me, or gals. And that was kind of my goal, that just see if I could be legit or not. Is could I pay people to make this thing happen for me and really rely on them? And so that's kind of how we did that. And I remember I was playing North by Northwest in Portland on a particular year, and the MP3 was now the big thing, and it was supposed to be a life-changing thing and really make everything great for musicians. And they interviewed me, and I played along. I said, yeah, this could be really great. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is not going to be well, because the fox was guarding the hen house. Yeah, so the people that had guarded those royalties, the mechanical royalties, they sort of fell asleep at the wheel. It's kind of old money or old music industry folks. And
yeah, that's kind of what I've always said too. I said that the technology
got way ahead of those that were kind of holding the fairness. Yeah. So how do we get into that? What was your original question?
I was just talking about touring and sustainability.
Yeah.
and
crowdfunding.
Crowdfunding, right?
Crowdfunding is, it feels emotionally precarious, but it really is a wonderful way to engage with the folks that you that have been following you over the years and want to really be a part of something you're doing other than just streaming you all the time. And
right, exactly. Yeah.
And so I've always tried to have 75% of that record already ready to go before I crowdfund. And that lowers my anxiety. So that has been a part of what I do, direct compensation with fans, and to kind of create something sort of special about that. And then the next thing that we did differently is, there really is one platform out there that is truly honoring artists still today, and that is Bandcamp. And given the tragic sort of situation in where we had not been honored, streaming and otherwise, I really wanted to kind of highlight them as a way of saying thank you. Because I have... they have been an important part of my sustainability. One of the things that I'm pretty lucky about is that, for whatever reason, I own every record that I put out, whether it was with a label or independent. I've been able to get it back.
Super important.
Yeah. And so over the years, I've created a box set of my full discography, and I've sold a ton of those through Bandcamp. And it really helps, So we wanted to honor them in the release of this, that we actually put the physical product out immediately after the crowdfund. And then we made it available on Bandcamp only. And that threw everybody for a loop, including the publicist. Was like, well, this is different. And I'm like, yeah. We need something different because nothing's working.
Well, yeah, exactly. You need something innovative because I've always said that too. Like I'm a musician as well, and the other stuff that I do, and I'm like, you got to figure out how you're going to promote. You put all this money and all this effort into your product, and to put out a great record, but then you really have to also, along with that, you have to have as much, if not more, equal planning on how to promote it, and also and recoup some costs so you can have sustainability. You're able to make another record. You're able to go on tour, and talk a little bit about that with artists, because I know you've been also touring for years, and independent artists these days are really trying to figure out what to do. Like, what's some advice that you could give?
Well, if you're in a particular time of your life that you can do it, and get harness the patron saint, Henry Rollins, and get in the van and enjoy the process of being so highly focused where nothing else matters but getting to the next gig on time and engaging with people that show up and not getting depressed if only 10 show up. I have some wonderful memories. You know, you get too far out of your geographic location and you're like, I'm a fish out of water here. Yeah.
Nobody really knows.
I remember
at the beginning.
A label that I was on put me on a tour, and I was playing some club in Philly. Actually, it was The Fire. I remember it now. And I was on this bill that was supposed to really help. But the very last minute, that band switched the order, and I had to go last. And I was traveling solo. And I was so depressed. I had one friend that I knew that was coming that was from Philly. And this is an interesting tour because my friend Nairi Watts is a photographer, and she had created this montage of photography that she shot onto me with the back of the screen, kind of a Velvet Underground sort of thing. And so I could not see the audience, and I had to try not to stare at the projector or my eyeballs would burn out. So
you're like, I'm just gonna lock in and do everything.
So it was one of these very, like, you have to just totally be in your head and tune everything else out. So I knew there was one person sitting in the back of the room, and I'm like, this sucks. It was a very dark club, very small club. And I just played that set and pretty much closed my eyes through the whole thing. And then part of the routine of the set was at the end of a certain song, I would always say that if you have if there's anything you want to hear, let me know. And all of a sudden I heard a voice say, or two voices say, Rockabye, which is a song off my very first album. And I was shocked. And I opened my eyes, and there is like 10 lit ember lights in front of me, and there was like 10 kids smoking cigarettes in the front of the stage. And I'm like, crazy. And I just remember how good that felt. Not the smoking, but just how good that felt. That somebody from some other part of the world knew enough about me to come out and see a show. And that's those first experiences when you get out of your hometown that really help format you as an artist. So if you can get that experience by getting out of your hometown and play to people that, just work it, social media, whatever, work it. And it really helps define your craft. But now these days, I can't really do that so much anymore with a family and all that kind of stuff. And so I have to be really strategic in a different way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, strategic is a good word because, when you're young, you're just like, let's just go for it, jump in the van, let's go do it. And then as you get older and you're, like you mentioned, you're more established, you have a family, then you really have to kind of pick your battles and figure out like where am I going to get the most traction.
And that's another form of stability too, or sustainability, is just your relationships and not basically throwing them under the bus all the time because you have a passion. So you have to kind of, like, if you're going to be in this a long time, you have to kind of pay attention to that as well, I think, or you burn out or whatever. But
it's your support system is because it's not easy being an artist of any type, and having that support system really becomes crucial. Like you mentioned,
it does, and you can, if you get close to artists, sometimes you notice those that don't have that and how it affects them. But so these days, a lot of times anytime I'm flying out somewhere, I will line up a gig, and if there's not enough time, I'll do a house concert, and I absolutely love them. And I have kind of a system. I have a way of flying out some gear to make it really worthwhile. And I generally will have players in that region. And I'll call them up
Oh, okay.
sometimes and say, you want to do this gig there? So sometimes it turns into a kind of a full band type situation. Other times it's just a
Awesome.
solo deal, and I love that as well. Here at home, all the shows have been full orchestra, so it's been a really kind of we've been able to recreate the album exactly how it sounds.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's such a blessing, especially for the fans because they like to hear the full album with the strings. It's just not always
Yeah,
possible,
and I
right?
think it's good for people to realize this isn't just some plug-in that someone slapped on a record. This is real. With all the AI stuff out there, people are tempted to think, oh yeah, well these are all samples and he just dropped his voice in and like, no, it's just blood, sweat, and tears. And
Yeah, and you do hear that on the record, like you hear the organic. I just really like the production style as if it feels very organic. It's like somebody sitting in front of you
Mhm.
playing acoustic guitar and just really interesting. Um, Tell people how they can find you online and get in contact with
Yeah,
you.
that's the best way of staying in touch. My website is just my name, robertdeeble.com, and it will usher you into Bandcamp immediately. Um, and like I said, we use Bandcamp as kind of our main platform, and every every streaming entity out there or YouTube or whatever, it all directs back to Bandcamp.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to have that hub. Super
And
important.
so our records you'll see the merch listed in whatever streaming platform you're using, and by the time you follow that back, you'll probably have you'll have the ability to have a personal engagement if you want it, where you can't get that necessarily in the streaming platforms and that kind of stuff. So we haven't boycotted streaming. I think we're this close from doing that, but we don't see it as music distribution. We see it as marketing. Hmm.
Right, yeah. And I mean it's part of the puzzle, but it's not the most important part. I think the most important part to
Yeah.
begin with is quality music, quality
Yeah.
production, quality songs. And that's gonna drive a lot of that. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk. I know you're a busy guy and I know you're doing a lot of stuff. And actually too, do you have shows coming up? Are you going to be touring at all on this album or
We don't have anything to announce yet. We're trying to configure a show for Portland. That's the next thing, and we'll probably do another California uh, stop. And there's a couple. We've been talking about doing a Cincinnati show as well. So um,
okay.
right now it's a little hard to book with the holidays. I'm just not getting the
Yeah,
callbacks,
right, yeah.
as quickly as yeah.
Yeah, everybody's it's a busy time of year. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it definitely would encourage people to see you live, and hopefully, I get out to California quite a bit. Like we mentioned, we're kind of
Hmm.
Southern California boys. But yeah, I'll keep an eye out. It'd be fun to come see you live.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe I'll jam on some bass at some point.
That would be
Who knows?
fun. Always looking for bass.
Yeah, it's fun. I love doing. I do a lot of stuff in Finland and
Oh, do you
Scandinavia
really?
with singer songwriters, and I love and I love we have a record thing over there, and I love that interplay. Like even just the small duo thing is with great players is
The
so much
cover of
fun.
this album was shot by a wonderful friend in the Netherlands. Hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You know what? That's the thing, because the thing with the internet and social media, things have become very global. And I work a lot with people over in Europe and Scandinavia, and it's all been because I met them on, Instagram or whatever. So that's a really fun aspect
It
of
is.
that
Yeah.
that part of things, I guess. But well, thank you so much, Robert. I really appreciate it. This when we release this, we'll have all your information in the podcast
Great.
episode, including your links. We'll include your Bandcamp link and so people can support you there as well. But thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us, and please consider subscribing to our podcast and follow us on our social media pages for guest announcements.